The NBA trade deadline is February 9th, and we're getting closer and closer to finally seeing some player movement around the league. Welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us. We've been trying to do this every single night, but unfortunately, Mother Nature did not cooperate this week. It knocked out our power here in Texas here for the last couple of days. So sorry for those of you who've been trying to join us every single night. However, power is restored. Internet's back. A little bit of damage around the property, but we're all right. But we're back in the saddle and ready to get back underway. Groundhog's Day today. Groundhog did see a shadow. 6 more weeks of winter anyway. For those of you who worry about those kinds of things. But the trade deadline, as I mentioned, is about a week away. We will be live for you guys all day next Thursday. So make sure you join us then. We will start at 8 a.m. During the trade deadline. We'll break it down for you, every single trade that happens that day, and then we'll probably go about an hour or two after the deadline just to make sure nothing else trickles in after the deadline passes. But appreciate you guys joining us here at the Upside. Make sure you hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at UpsideSN. Whenever we do go live, whenever we do post a video, we will post it there as well. You can also check out our Facebook page, Upside Sports Network, as well. So let's get right into it. What have we missed over the past couple of weeks? First and foremost, we've seen basically one legitimate trade, in my opinion, the Rui Hachimura deal going to the Lakers for 3 second-round picks. There has been significant conversation around wings around the NBA. Just before the power went out down here, I told you guys the Dallas Mavericks basically were putting all their chips into one basket right now, trying to acquire a second superstar to pair with Luka Doncic. That seems to be the one team that's going out there and trying to make things happen at the top of the market. Now, of course, the best player on the market right now is OG Anunoby. He's not exactly a superstar yet, but he could be. He's a very good two-way player, averaging 17 points a game. Really strong effort on the defensive end. But he's the best player right now on the market. He's probably going to command at least 2 first-round picks, but it sounds like there's at least 3 teams with significant interest in him and another 10 who've at least checked in on the asking price for him. Now, the Raptors have set an asking price as the DeJounte Murray deal, 3 first-round picks. Remember, those picks, I believe, were fully unprotected, and so something like that would really set that franchise forward. However, we just saw a news article come out a few moments ago that the Raptors are not just only looking for first-round picks. Sure, they want to have them, of course, but they're also looking for young talent coming back to them as well. So they're basically wanting the best of both worlds, and if there's not a better player on the market, I guess you can ask for the moon. But OG Anunoby, while he's a very good player, I just wonder if he's worth all of that. Now, remember, the Toronto Raptors still have a decent team as far as decent pieces around him. Welcome in, Kenny. But they have Fred VanVleet, they have Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, Gary Trent. We'll get into the Gary Trent asking price here in just a moment. But they have some nice pieces there, and he's the third banana as far as an offensive weapon on a good night. Not really sure that I see the asking price being worth it to whichever team ultimately acquires him. Could he blossom into that? Absolutely, and I guess that's what you're really hoping for. But he's not exactly a guy like Bradley Beal, where he's already a surefire star here in the NBA, or like a Kawhi Leonard years ago, when he was on the trade block. But he's the best that's at the deadline right now. There's conversation around the Chicago Bulls whether or not they will end up making some big significant changes to their roster around Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan. I'm of the belief that I don't see anything happen there. That we haven't really seen anybody really pushing themselves forward to try to acquire either player. And whenever you don't have really a feeding frenzy for either one of them, the asking price doesn't get too high. And it seems like the Chicago Bulls just want to take one more run at a playoff run with this group, and then maybe in the offseason revisit the idea of trading one or the other, or both. But thank you, Kenny. Yeah, everything is okay now. We did get a little bit of damage, had some damage to the truck anyway, a little damage to the house, a little bit of damage to the back fence anyway. And but everybody's okay. Power was out for a couple of days. Went and stayed with the folks anyway. Make sure we had some heat. And around 3, 4 o'clock this afternoon, we finally got some electricity back and did a little bit in the backyard to get the remaining part of the tree that was still hanging on the fence off, and then fix the rest of the tree this weekend. But everybody here seems to be okay. Neighborhood was pretty heavily hit with falling trees anyway, more than anything else. A lot of tree damage from ice, just the weight of the ice falling, that kind of thing. Tree across the way knocked out a light pole and that kind of a thing. Luckily, it didn't fall in anybody's house, but everybody's okay. But hopefully everybody else is okay around Texas and everywhere else. A lot of ice damage around the state. Encore, of course, did a lot of repairs through the night anyway. I was actually driving around a little bit just to see, where all the damage was. We had a lot of power outages around here, and seems like we're finally getting back to normal. Should be warmer temperatures tomorrow, warmer temperatures after that, but everybody's okay. But as I mentioned, OG Anunoby is probably the beginning of the trade deadline for most of the market anyway. If he does move, then the next step down for wings is going to include guys like Dorian Finney-Smith, who's been made available for the first time by the Dallas Mavericks. Tim Hardaway Jr. From the Mavericks as well. You've got guys like Reggie Bullock from the Mavericks. You got Jay Crowder from the Suns, Cam Reddish from the Knicks. Players like that could be available here at the deadline. I told you guys a moment ago that the Toronto Raptors had set an asking price for Gary Trent. It was originally believed when he was having such a poor start to the season that he could have been had for 2 really good second-round picks. Now the asking price is a contract of matching value and a protected first, or at least 2 good second-round picks, which tells me that they've at least got that much of an offer right now and could pull the trigger on it. He's still a very young player, only 24 years old, I believe, but his size a little bit diminutive. He does hustle, I will give him that, but size is a big thing in the NBA right now. The longer wings you have, the better you usually are. And a player like Gary Trent, while he's still young and still really just touching the, or just beginning to become the player he could ultimately become, he definitely leaves a little bit to be desired in that way. But it seems like if you're looking for some scoring punch, maybe a sixth man, or maybe just some youth at the 2 position, Gary Trent could be the guy for you. Now, the big guy everybody wants on this out of the Toronto Raptors right now is Fred VanVleet, and that includes the LA Clippers, the LA Lakers. Pretty much any team in need of guard help right now is making a call to Toronto. Now, the Clippers would like to make a move centered around John Wall and Luke Kennard to try to make that happen. They would really like to not trade away Reggie Jackson or a Terrence Mann. They want to hold on to those 2 players. I think there's a deal that could be made there. It just kind of depends on if they're willing to include other players that are key players in their rotation. Say guys like Norman Powell, etc. Powell's been very good for them, especially with the injuries to Kawhi Leonard and Paul George over the last year and a half. But he's been very consistent for them on both ends of the floor. He's really developed into a little bit better offensive player than he ever was with Toronto, and he's taken massive strides in his career. He would be a piece that if you're looking to make a trade for a Fred VanVleet, maybe Toronto says, "Hey, we would like to have Norman Powell back," and just kind of go with that. But the Clippers certainly are looking for guard help. They're also looking at D'Angelo Russell of the Minnesota Timberwolves and Mike Conley of the Utah Jazz. Earlier today, we saw some news articles coming out about the Utah Jazz being willing to trade literally just about everybody outside of Markkanen and Kessler. The news article today dealt with Jared Vanderbilt and the Portland Trailblazers being keenly interested in him. Now remember, they are not very satisfied with Nurkic as their 5. I wonder if they want to go with more of a small ball lineup, maybe put Vanderbilt at their 5 position, and then kind of go with a smaller lineup overall, Grant at the 4, and then just kind of divvy out the minutes with the rest of their guards from there. But if they do decide to make some moves here at the deadline, it sounds like Josh Hart could be on the way out, Nurkic could be on the way out, but Vanderbilt could be one of the guys coming in. Now, the Portland Trailblazers have extended a max contract offer to Jeremy Grant. 4 years, $114 million, I believe, is what the contract offer was. It's believed that he's holding out for the offseason. We can get a 5-year deal instead of a 4-year deal. I believe that's the route he'll ultimately end up going. If the Trailblazers are confident that they can get him at that max price and they're willing to pay it, go ahead and hold on to Jeremy Grant. If you're not willing to give him 5 years, if you're not willing to give him the max after the season, I believe they absolutely should trade him. I still think they're confident about their ability to be able to re-sign him, so I think that's ultimately not going to happen as far as the trade possibility. But it is a little bit of a risk for them not to make a move, especially when he has to get to free agency before he can sign that level of an extension. But again, welcome into the Upside Sports Network. Make sure you hit that subscribe and like the video. It really does help us out. We're going to be live with you guys every single night, including the weekend this weekend, because we have missed so many days because of the storm and other issues. But we'll be live for you guys every single evening, 9 p.m., breaking down all the latest rumors from around the NBA. Remember, we don't just cover the NBA here, we also cover the MLB hot stove season. We cover the NFL playoffs for you. We'll cover the NHL trade deadline in a month as well. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Follow us on Twitter, Upside Sports, or at Upside SN, and our Facebook page, Upside Sports Network. But let's kind of check in with a lot of the other rumors that are going on around the league. We saw the extension of, at the beginning of the week anyway, with Miles Turner staying in Indianapolis. Added some salary to this year's contract, and then he's got about $20 million on the following year and another $20-ish million dollars in the final year of that deal. Nice extension for both team and player. Basically, it's a 2-year, $60 million extension. However, most of that money is going to be divvied out between 3 seasons instead of two, or well, that money's going to be divvied out between 3 seasons instead of 2. That's kind of the perk for the way they had their salary cap structured this year, is they were able to do that. And now he's a very tradable piece going forward. They still get to see if he's a fit with Tyrese Halliburton, if they're able to continue to build their core. They've got a couple of really good young rookies, and they could get even better here at the deadline if they decide to trade away a guy like Buddy Hield or get some first-round picks back in there. But the Pacers could be a very interesting team to keep our eyes on at this trade deadline, because they may be one of the teams out there that's willing to trade some pieces, whereas others are just looking to stand pat. Looking at you, Miami Heat, it sounds like your horrible start to the season, to put it mildly, finally starting to turn around a little bit, and that's why you're no longer willing to trade Kyle Lowry. I just wonder how able they are to make improvements without making some type of other big move on their roster or other first-round picks going out the door, because they have contracts to trade, sure, and guys like Duncan Robinson, but that's a big contract for another team to take on. You're going to have to give up assets in addition to whatever you'd have to give up to get the player that you want. So Miami, I think they're going to stand pretty much pat here at the deadline. Don't really expect much movement from them. The Celtics in the last couple of days have also been connected to a number of big men out there, most recently with Kelly Olynyk of the Utah Jazz. They were previously connected with Jakob Poeltl. The asking price for him was 2 first-round picks from the Spurs. He's expected to be a free agent after the season and command a salary around $20 million per season. That's a hefty salary for even a team like the Boston Celtics to take on. So maybe bringing back a familiar face like Kelly Olynyk might be the way they ultimately end up going. But it's said they're looking for more of a defensive-minded guy at the center spot. Olynyk doesn't necessarily qualify that for me. He's more of a two-way player in my mind. Still has a little bit of range from 3. If they're looking for more of a defensive-minded guy, I would look more towards Minnesota's Naz Reid or something like that. Serge Ibaka from the Bucks. Now the Brooklyn Nets are also looking for front court help behind Nick Claxton. They're looking for a center there. We'll see how things work out for them, but he's really blossomed this year. Kevin Durant's missed significant time this year, and Claxton's really had an expanded role on that team as a result, and he seized the opportunity. Kyrie Irving, at the beginning of the season, all was lost essentially for them. They had 2 players who absolutely didn't want to be there to begin the season. Well, look at them now. They're in the top 4 of the East, and they played very well so far this year, to the point where even Kyrie Irving is willing to extend to be able to stay in Brooklyn going forward. Seems like fences might actually be mended, but we'll see how things work out in the playoffs. Remember, things looked sort of hunky-dory during the season, and then just the whole thing came unraveled in the postseason. We'll see how they finish off this season, and if they're able to advance after or past the first round this time. But they're not going to have the issues of facing number 1 or number 2 seed. They're going to have the home court advantage in their first round matchup wherever they end up going. There was a brawl in tonight's game between the Cleveland Cavaliers and I can't remember the other team, but Donovan Mitchell was involved in that. We'll see if there's any suspensions that are handed out. They're one of the teams that could finish the season in the top 4. They could be a team, if Donovan Mitchell misses time because of a suspension, they could tumble down the standings. And if that happens, they could be last year's Brooklyn Nets, where they're a really good team that has to face one of the top few seeds in the East because they had a player out for a significant period of time. Brooklyn last year, that was due to injuries and the half being able to play for Kyrie Irving, half being unable to play. But we'll see if they're able to stay above the number, or stay in the top 4 of the East for the Nets anyway, to avoid that kind of thing happening. So you're a Nets fan. You're from and live in Trenton. You'll always be a fan when they were New Jersey Nets. You've been hearing a lot of Brooklyn Nets have been really involved in the trade deadline. What are they looking for exactly? I would think a big. Yes, Kenny, they are looking for a big. That's kind of what we were just talking about. They are looking for more of a defensive-minded guy. So think along the lines of a Naz Reid or a Serge Ibaka. buy low candidates that can come in there, play a role, give them 5 to 6 minutes of good defense, go back on the bench, come back in the second half, another 5, 6 minutes of good defense, and that's it. That's what they're looking for at the deadline. The other thing they could use is some wing help on the defensive end. They've gotten some really good performance out of TJ Warren. He is out, I believe, right now, or he just missed a little bit of time. I can't remember if he's still out, but he's missed some time because of injury. He's working his way back into game shape, of course, because he didn't play much at all last year. I don't think he played at all last year. But he's really performed well in the bubble, kind of expanded his game. And then right after that, he suffered a season-ending injury that kept him out for a significant period of time. This is his first real run in the NBA ever since that bubble performance. And we saw how good bubble TJ Warren was, the 50-point game and all that. If they're able to get that level of player healthy and keep him healthy for the postseason, they could really have something on the offensive end. Now, remember, they made the trade this past offseason for Royce O'Neal, gave up a first-round pick to bring him in from the Utah Jazz. I think something could be in store similar to that type of a deal. However, they're going to have to attach some outgoing salaries to make that happen. So, for instance, if you're looking for more defensive-minded guy, let's just take Dorian Finney-Smith. I'm very familiar with the Mavericks. They're my favorite team. I've been very open about that. But a player like that, or maybe even Reggie Bullock, would have a lower asking price, in my opinion. Say you're able to orchestrate a 3-team deal. Dallas gets Cam Reddish. The Brooklyn Nets get Reggie Bullock. Maybe the Knicks get something back in return. However you end up working it out, if say you end up getting Reggie Bullock or Dorian Finney-Smith, you're going to have to send out either Seth Curry or a guy like Joe Harris. They would love to unload Joe Harris's contract. But then if you do that, you're going to have to include other assets as well. I'm just wondering how many assets are they really willing to give up. I still am not sold on Ben Simmons being any type of I'll put it this way, a consistent star-level NBA player. I don't think that's ever going to be in the cards for Ben Simmons. I think it was a mistake for the Brooklyn Nets to try to acquire him. I think they should have tried to engineer a 3-team deal to send Ben Simmons somewhere else, get picks, maybe better players back in return. But you're going to have to live with what you got right now. Ben Simmons on the defensive end of the floor is going to be very good for you in the postseason. On the offensive end of the floor, he's obviously going to leave a lot to be desired. You're going to have to leave a lot of the pressure on Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. That was the issue that we saw last postseason, is that the Nets didn't really have another safety valve once the Boston Celtics took away Kevin Durant. They made him look very human in that series. And Kyrie Irving, part-time player all year. You saw the issues that ultimately ended up being. And then, of course, now you have Ben Simmons. While he's good on the defensive end of the floor, he does nothing for you on the offensive end. So you're going to have to rely on Seth Curry. But if you're willing to bring in, or if you're looking to bring in some wing help on the defensive end, and you trade away Seth Curry, who's the player that's going to get you baskets outside of KD and Kyrie Irving? That's the question I would have. Now, the expanded performance of Nick Claxton this year has really given them another option, another dynamic to their offense, and it's really helped them out. I just wonder how effective that's going to be in the postseason. Are these things that can carry over into the postseason, or is this just regular season Nick Claxton getting some run and looking like a good player? That's the issue I think Brooklyn's going to have to figure out. Is this something real we can depend on in the postseason, or is this something we're going to have to put away in the back of our mind because we have to play an 82-game season, we have to have somebody else carry the load every now and again, so Nick Claxton, here you go. Or is, again, he that postseason performer? Remains to be seen. But the Brooklyn Nets, again, need a backup big man, defensive-minded center. They're looking for wing help, but again, what exactly are you going to give up to get it to happen? They would love to give up Joe Harris. There's not a team in the league that's willing to eat that Joe Harris contract for nothing, especially when you're trying to give away a piece here at the deadline. They're going to look for significant assets back if they're asked to take on Joe Harris's deal. So that's kind of what I'd keep in mind here at the deadline for those of you who are Brooklyn Nets fans. If you have questions about your favorite team, feel free to send them to us. There's a lot of rumors around the league right now. I know the Orlando Magic, we never really had Orlando Magic fans in here yet, but they are rumored to be active here at the deadline looking for veteran point guard help. Point guards that have been rumored to go there include Derrick Rose as well as Josh Hart, both of which I think would be fantastic for them. They are trying to improve their very young team. They have two 20-point scorers on their roster right now. They are very young. They need some type of leadership, and so I think they need to make some type of a trade to bring in some leadership there. After this season, they could talk about the possibility of moving Jonathan Isaac, but no team is going to be willing to take on his contract right now, especially since this is the first couple of games he's played also since 2020. So kind of keep that in mind for Orlando Magic's future. They've been playing this entire season, the last couple of years, without one of their best players, Jonathan Isaac. Mo Bamba is one of the players that's available here at the deadline. I know, Kenny, you're a Brooklyn Nets fan. Maybe Mo Bamba could be the defensive-minded center you're interested in. He has improved his three-point shot over his career. So if he's able to, or if he's asked to perform extended minutes, if Nick Claxton goes down due to injury, maybe you can count on a guy like Mo Bamba to at least fill in and not completely leave you a void in the center of your defense. But let us know in the comments section who's your favorite team, what deadline deals you're thinking of. For those of you wondering, hoopsrumors.com is one place you can keep up to date with all the latest. They're very good as far as keeping you informed. But here at the Upside, we do the video format kind of a thing. So if you don't have a whole bunch of time to sit there and read the whole article and figure out what the latest rumor is, we're going to make a whole bunch of short videos, give you a little snippet about what's going to happen or what has happened or the breakdown of the trade or whatever the case may be, and keep you guys updated in short, quick sound bites. And then you can always check out our long format video if you want the full breakdown as well by hitting that subscribe button. Seems like it happens every year where somebody on the team is happy if they don't make it far in the playoffs, like Katie asking for a trade and other stuff like that. Like I said, Kenny, I think the biggest issue for you guys is just making it out of the first round. If you make it out of the first round, I think all is good. Even if you get completely blown out in the second round, say you get gentlemen swept 4-1 by Boston once again in the second round, I think that's still a pretty good outcome for you based on what you came into the season expecting. You removed your head coach just, a month or two into the season in Steve Nash, and they've done a really good job staying at the top of the East. They do have two of the best players in the NBA when they are on their game, when they are healthy, when they are in the lineup, when they aren't having infighting together. Notice how those are a lot of ifs and wins and things that they have to rely on. But if they get those things to happen, they're a very good team. And with the addition of Royce O'Neal has given them a little bit more heart than they had last year. They didn't really have much heart last year. And bringing in a guy like T.J. Warren, I was shocked that he went to Brooklyn because, again, KD's there, Royce O'Neal's there. There's not a lot of minutes there. You got Joe Harris coming back from injury as well. Somebody who's already invested in the club. Was there going to be minutes available for him? He took the chance and went there and said, hey, this is the place where I'm going to rehabilitate my career. He could have signed pretty much anywhere, and he chose to sign with Brooklyn. That says a lot for T.J. Warren that he's been able to carve out that type of a role on that team. I'm really excited to see what he does after the season, where he signs. He was always more of an offensive player, not really much of a defensive, stalwart or anything like that. Playing around a guy like Royce O'Neal has improved his defensive abilities, but again, he's got to finish the season strong. He's had an injury now in the middle of the season. It'll be curious to see how he comes back from that and what his workload is like, how many minutes he's able to play, and if he's able to get back to playing, 30 minutes a game type of a player. T.J. Warren could get a big salary after the season, especially because everybody saw how he performed in the bubble and how he's performed in Brooklyn now that he's had a different type of a role on that team, and he's played very well. I'm very curious to see what happens with him after the season. But Luka Doncic just missed some time. For those of you who are Dallas Mavericks fans, he left the game tonight in the middle of the third quarter. The Pelicans were down close to 30 points at the time. Right now, I believe there's, just checking the TV right now, it looks like they're down by 12. But Dallas absolutely needs to make a move here at the deadline. They, I think, are going to be one of the most active teams at the deadline. We saw 2 weeks ago when they were playing the Atlanta Hawks, Woj spoke before the game about the Dallas Mavericks expecting to be one of the most active teams here at the deadline, along with the Utah Jazz and the Toronto Raptors. I believe all three of those teams are going to make multiple trades, not just one, but multiple trades each. So keep your eyes peeled. There could be a framework with Dorian Finney-Smith going to Utah. They have already been reaching out to the Dallas Mavericks about the possibility of trading a guy like Malik Beasley or a Jordan Clarkson or a Mike Conley to Dallas for Dorian Finney-Smith. Dallas in previous years has always said no when teams have asked about him. I don't think that's going to get it done. Dorian Finney-Smith's on a team-friendly contract right now. I believe you're going to have to include picks or have it work into a bigger trade overall to allow them to get a star-level player back. That's what Dallas absolutely wants, or they want the ammunition to do so. I don't think they're going to try to go the free agency route. So for those of you saying, hey, we'll take on your long-term deals, not give you any first-round picks, but we'll take the long-term money off your books, say like I saw a trade idea out there from the Cleveland Cavaliers fan base. They're saying, hey, we'll take Dorian Finney-Smith, Bertans, and Hardaway, and we'll give you Kevin Love back and Karis LeVert. That's not going to happen. That kind of money, while you would take money off of the books for next year, that still leaves a big hole in their team, guts their core essentially, and then what's going to be on the free agent market after the season. You're talking about guys like Karis LeVert being some of the best players of this class. There's not really a superstar level player unless you're looking at maybe Fred VanVleet as kind of a second tier superstar, I suppose. But outside of that, there's not a whole lot of free agency buzz around this year's free agent class. So for those of you trying to say, hey, Mavericks, you can go the free agency route again, which they have failed at time and time again under Donnie Nelson as their GM, Nico Harrison is a new GM there in Dallas. He had last year where he made the trade to get Kristaps Porzingis' contract off the books to be able to make more tradable contracts, be able to flex them around the roster. He found one really nice piece in Spencer Dinwiddie. Bertans, of course, still looks like a horrible contract, but right now he has roughly $30 million left on his deal right now. That's roughly the contract right now that Russell Westbrook has remaining. That's roughly the contract that Kevin Love has remaining. Obviously, Love is only $30 million for the entire season, so his deal is probably more around the range of 18, 19 million left on that deal. But you get my point here. Bertans' contract, well, it looks horrible. You see 16 million with 3 years left on it when you go to fanspo.com and you're trying to trade the deal. He's only got a little bit of salary left this year. He's got next year's salary fully guaranteed. However, there's only $5 million of that final year guaranteed. Add all that up, you get about $30 million left in total salary. And so that's something that other teams might be willing to bite down on. Whereas Kristaps Porzingis' contract obviously was $30+ million. They split it up into Dinwiddie's deal. He's turned out well, as I mentioned. They don't look like they're going to move him. His three-point percentage looks fantastic. His off-the-ball play next to Luka Doncic looks great. They need to get another playmaker in there like a Jalen Brunson that they had last year. Have somebody else take the pressure off of Luka a little bit would help make their offense a lot better. But they're looking for a star at the deadline, so we'll see if anything happens there. Pretty sure they still have TJ Warren listed day to day. That's what I heard from the announcer last game I watched. That's what I saw as well. I was reading an article on it, though, that it's more like week to week. They're taking their time with TJ Warren because of the injury issues that he's had in the past. I don't see anything, or I don't see the Nets trying to push him back because, again, we're not in the postseason yet. I think once we get closer to the postseason, say we're talking in April, just before the playoffs start, you want to get him back and in rhythm again before the playoffs, I could see something like that happening, sure. Or if they're in the postseason, hey, if you're able to go, go. Otherwise, just stay on the bench and, leave, don't try to rush your way back. Sit out a playoff round entirely. But TJ Warren right now, take your time. There's no reason to rush you back. You're still in the top 4 of the East. There's no reason to rush TJ Warren back. Remember how I said Dallas had close to a 30-point lead when Luka left? It's about 1:40 left in the game. It's down to 8, and the Pelicans have the ball. They're playing without Zion Williamson, by the way. And I want to say Valanciunas is also out now due to foul trouble. Make it a 6-point game as Brandon Ingram makes a layup. 1:15 left. Getting interesting. No Luka on the floor for Dallas. Dinwiddie handling the ball. Nice drive. Settles for a 3. Gets blocked. Going the other way. Looks like a layup here for the Pelicans, and it is. 4-point game. It's going to be a timeout here by Dallas. Dallas is about to spoil a 30-point cushion. Dallas is still playing without Christian Wood as well, who fractured his thumb. He's been out for the better part of a week. Maxi Kleber's been out for the better part of 2 months. So kind of the 2 of their big men that they have to kind of contest down low are out. Powell, I believe, had 5 fouls midway through the third quarter. It's been an ugly performance defensively in the second half. The first half, they played well. Only surrendered 43 points, but Dallas needs to improve that defense. They need another ball handler. They need another superstar. Do you notice these things that I'm mentioning here? A lot of needs. And for a team that has a superstar in Luka, they need to make some decisions. The one thing I've never agreed with how they've built this team during the Donnie Nelson's years was they did it 2 different ways that they did it with Dirk and then they did it differently with Doncic. With Dirk, they got to an NBA Finals in 2005 2006 season. They did so by acquiring a lot of talent via trade, continuing to turn over that roster. I remember every single season they would start the season by saying, "There's only 3 players left on this roster from the previous season." Well, yeah, because they turned over that roster and made trade after trade after trade. They acquired Nick Van Axel, Rafe LaFrentz, Tim Hardaway Jr. They acquired Eddie Jones at one point. They acquired Antoine Walker. They made the trade for Jerry Stackhouse. They made the trade for Antoine Jameson. Then they traded Antoine Jameson for a top 5 pick in the draft that turned into Devin Harris. They made the trade for Jason Terry. They made trade after trade after trade to make things work. They made the trade for Eric Dampier, Sean Marion. They acquired pretty much every player on their roster that they acquired was via trade, not free agency. Then you fast forward to the Luka Doncic years. What do they try to do? Well, first and foremost, at the end of the Dirk Nowitzki years, they tried to build on chemistry and continuity. And for the first couple of years after they acquired the talent around 2009, when they make the trade for Jason Kidd, they kept that core intact for a couple of years once they had the talent. After they had it, they realized the salary cap was changing, money was changing around the league, and so Mark Cuban and the Mavericks front office made the decision to gut the roster, change it over completely, not bring back Tyson Chandler, not bring back Jason Kidd, and that roster did not look anything like it. They weren't able to field a competitive team, and the Miami Heat, the team that they had just beaten in the NBA Finals in 6 games, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, the first year of the Big Three, they beat them, and Dirk Nowitzki was the NBA Finals MVP. The next year, the Mavericks didn't look anything like that team. They got blown out, I believe, on Christmas by like 30 points. LeBron had something to prove, and showed it in that game. And every season thereafter, the Mavericks made pitch after pitch after pitch in free agency. They tried to get undrafted free agents on multi-year contracts like Dorian Finney-Smith to no avail. None of those contracts really worked out, and they just didn't have much talent on the roster. So that roster went all the way into the lottery for years. The best player they got out of that lottery before that, or before Luka Doncic, was Dennis Smith Jr. Before Luka Doncic arrived, he looked like a decent player, 15 to 20 points a game guy. Looks like he was going to be more of a score first, combo guard, like a Jamal Crawford maybe. And then when Luka got there, instant switch. You realized you had a superstar on your hands. Congratulations, Dallas, for making the move. And they did the right thing by saying, Luka, you're now the focal point of this team, not Dennis Smith Jr. They made the decision, hey, Dennis Smith doesn't really work out. So they traded away Dennis Smith Jr. for Kristaps Porzingis. They got a second star next to him. Great. That's how you did it with Dirk Nowitzki. You made trades. You improved the roster. You got talent around him. Obviously, the trade didn't work out for Kristaps, but they didn't do what they did after that. They didn't continue to try to get better, to improve their talent around him. And that was the issue that I had with the Dallas Mavericks, is they stuck with players that they shouldn't have. For instance, a player that's played really well for them over the past couple of years, that's not necessarily a great player in the NBA, he's more of a glue guy on this team, is Dwight Powell. If you're a Mavericks fan, you absolutely loathe having him on your roster, and that's just because he's eating up space. You love when he's on the floor just because he's heart, hustle, those kinds of things, but he's also taking up space for players that could make things a little bit better, for going out and making the trade for a Miles Turner, going out there and giving more minutes to Christian Wood when he first got in there, Maxi Kleber's good defensive abilities. Other than that, I mean, Dwight Powell is, again, a glue guy, and they keep giving contracts and trying to build chemistry with those type of players. As I mentioned, undrafted free agents, the most success that they've had with those type of contracts are Dorian Finney-Smith and Maxi Kleber. They haven't really gotten much out of that, or outside of that, and they continue to try to go back to the well on that during the Donnie Nelson years. That's part of the reason why he's no longer there. Nico Harrison, under his regime anyway, they've made the trade to get rid of Kristaps Porzingis, break down that contract into 2 more tradable deals in Davis Bertans and Spencer Dinwiddie. Dinwiddie actually fits very well on this team. I'd be very loath to trade him unless it's for an absolute bona fide star next to Luka. But he would be one of the good pieces that they brought in so far. Bertans' contract, as I mentioned, is about $30 million left in guarantees. I know it looks way worse than that when you're trying to trade him on Fanspo, but it's about $30 million left for the remaining part of this year, the $5 million guarantee in his final season, and then next year's $16 and change for his contract. That adds up to about $30 million. That could be traded out to any team far more easily than a $30+ million a season contract of Kristaps Porzingis, who at the time wasn't meshing well with Luka Doncic, was consistently having injury issues and poor performance, and he just disappeared in the playoff series against the LA Clippers. And Bubble Kristaps Porzingis was very good. The following year, Kristaps Porzingis was stuck in the corner, averaging 8 points a game in the playoffs. That contract looked horrible, and the Mavericks ended up having to give away a second-round pick next to Kristaps just for the privilege to take on the bad contract of Davis Bertans and Spencer Dinwiddie. Dinwiddie has, of course, righted the ship. Davis Bertans still looks like Davis Bertans, but that's kind of how the Mavericks evolved to the point where they are right now. For those of you wondering, the Mavericks game right now, 3-point game. Mavericks lead at 109-106. They had, as I mentioned, a 30-point lead in this game. 30. Luka's been out since the middle of the third quarter. They have to make some type of a move, I believe. But again, they're missing their two big men. They're missing Luka Doncic. They're one and two best players, Christian Wood and Luka. I just look at this team, and they are supposed to have good defensive wings on this roster with Dorian Finney-Smith and Reggie Bullock. They're getting big time minutes, and yet they're still 20 plus ranked in as far as defensive efficiency. That does not speak well to your team defense as a whole. They still may be performing pretty well defensively as far as their specific player, but as a whole, things are just not working defensively for the Dallas Mavericks. I've seen some pushback on one of my trade videos that I did for the Mavericks about them trading Dorian Finney-Smith, and they're like, "Don't trade Dorian, he's our best defensive player." We're still 23rd, 26th ranked defensively, and you're crying to me about how Dorian's our best defensive player while we're ranked that low? Get better first and foremost, and then figure out the defense. You need more talent first and foremost. You're going to have still some defensive players on your roster, whether, after the deadline you still have Reggie Bullock or you still have, Josh Green to sit there and play defense. Green, by the way, is one of the most improved players in the NBA, along with Nick Claxton. That was a very interesting out-of-bounds play there. Long arms of Brandon Ingram. He deflected the inbounds pass, and he was standing on the out-of-bounds line there. They're going to review it, though, it looks like. 3.4 is currently on the clock. I'm sure they'll adjust it after they review. But I wonder if it was a violation of him coming too close to the out-of-bounds player, because he's jumping out of bounds to make the deflection. He's not out of bounds yet when he taps the ball, so it might be a jump ball here as well if they don't whistle him for a violation. And they're not even going to bother reviewing it. They just came together and said, play on. Very interesting. The entire Pelicans sideline is like crowding everybody. Now the Mavericks get it in, 2.4 seconds. Dinwiddie's fouled. He sinks one of these, the game is over. But there's no way this game should have gotten as close as it did with Luka going off for 21 in the first quarter. If I'm Willie Green, I am adamant that you didn't at least review that crucial of a call with 3 seconds left in the game. I would probably have gotten teed up and made a point and tried to get a double tech to leave. Game's over anyway. Dinwiddie just hit the free throw. It's a 4-point game. 2.4 left. Kind of clunky finish here, but the Mavericks, the bigger question for them is what do they do after this? As I mentioned, Dinwiddie's performed very well without Luka when he missed a little bit of time recently with the injured ankle. I imagine Luka's probably going to miss a little bit more time with the injured ankle. I think he had to come back a little bit too fast because Dallas could have slipped very quickly in the standings. In case you haven't paid attention to the standings in the West, pretty much everybody from about the 5th seed all the way to about the 13th seed are only separated by a handful of games. And the Mavericks very quickly could have gone from 5th, 6th, all the way out of even the play-in tournament with a losing streak of 4 games. That's how important it is in the West right now to keep pace And there's no team out there in the West that's really a juggernaut outside of maybe the Nuggets. How many teams are really fearful of the Nuggets? Even the Dallas Mavericks, with a very limited roster that they have around Luka, it's not exactly fearful of the way the Denver Nuggets play. I mean, you got Nikola Jokic, you got Jamal Murray, and of course Michael Porter. But outside of that, it's a very limited roster. They are looking for a backup point guard. They no longer have Campazzo or Monte Morris there that they had without Jamal Murray the last year or so because he was rehabbing from that injury. He is back. He's averaging, I believe, 21 points a game so far this year in his first season back from that devastating injury. And they really have nothing behind him. Bones Highland has been made available on the trade market, former first-round pick. He could command a decent price in a trade by himself. But if they choose to kind of package him with another pick, maybe they could get a really good backup point guard in there. Maybe the Wizards end up giving back Monte Morris, or maybe they go after another guard to give them two really high-quality point guards to back up their lineup. They could go the guard route and go to the Utah Jazz for Malik Beasley, Jordan Clarkson. But nice defensive play there by Josh Green. But that's the final, 111 to 106. Dallas wins it. As I mentioned, 30-point lead for the Mavericks while Luka's on the floor. He leaves with an injury, and they only survive by 5 points. But again, bigger issue is going to be how well Luka, how that ankle is. Didn't look like he rolled it too significantly during the game. He did have a lot of protection on it, so I imagine he'll only be out a couple of games at best. With the All-Star break coming up as well, you can expect him to be very limited, I'll put it that way, as far as his minutes, the practice schedule that he has. But Mavericks are going to have some work to do here at the deadline. Appreciate you guys joining us again. Thank you guys with being very patient with us over the past couple of days. We haven't had power down here in Texas. Winter storm anyway. Ice knocked down a whole bunch of power lines, trees, had a little bit of damage to the house, the truck, the back fence, but everybody's healthy. We didn't have power here at the house, so we had to go with our folks for a couple of days anyway, just for the heat. And still made it to the 9 to 5 though. For those of you watching from my 9 to 5, that was fun. But roads are clear, power's finally back on for the majority of the city, and things are starting to get back to normal down here. It's supposed to be warmer tomorrow, even warmer this weekend. But we will be live for you guys this weekend, breaking down all of the trade rumors that are out there. I'm sure we're going to get some of the bigger trades over the next few days. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. We'll break down the trades as they happen. We have the retirement of Tom Brady. We will have that video for you guys coming out, kind of a congratulations video for Tom Brady. And, of course, is he coming back is the question. Everybody wants to know, is he now the new Brett Favre, where he says, hey, I'm retired, and then comes back a few weeks later? He said for good this time, but for good was supposed to be last time too. But we shall see. He's got that big television contract waiting for him at Fox. But just want to say thank you guys for watching that video I put out the other day. I had the most responses on that video I've had in a while. Over 2,000 of you guys watched that video. Got 40 plus likes on it, so thank you guys. And I think I got like 12 comments, something like that, in the first hour. It was pretty nice. It was only a short 15-second video, but I appreciate you guys interacting with us, joining our community, and thank you guys for hitting that subscribe button, hitting the like button on this video as well. It really does help. And thank you guys for being so friendly. Kenny, thank you for the well wishes. We'll be live with you guys again tomorrow night, 9 o'clock. We will be live for you guys. We'll try to do our baseball live for you guys. I know a lot of our fan base came from our baseball trade deadline videos and from our off-season coverage this year. We will do our live tomorrow, hopefully before the 9 o'clock hour, around 8:30. Break down all the latest from around Major League Baseball. Some news on Luis Severino and the World Baseball Classic and the New York Yankees. We will have that for you guys tomorrow as well. Hall of Fame inductions, of course. We've got Scott Rowland was elected into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Congratulations to him. Looks like Todd Helton, Billy Wagner are going to be in that same class next year. They made nice improvements. Andrew Jones made some nice improvements where he could make it in on the ballot next year as well. And then, of course, you got a big incoming class, Adrian Beltre, among others, that are going to be the first time eligible for the Hall of Fame. But NHL trade deadline will be coming up in about a month. We'll be live for you guys during that entire day as well. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. We'll keep you guys up to date on everything from around all four major sports. The NFL, Super Bowl, the Super Bowl is here. We got our preview video locked and loaded. Recorded that before the power went out and couldn't put the finishing touches on it until tonight. That will be coming out for you guys tomorrow as well. Pro Bowl games are underway. Saw a little bit of that from the productions, the Omaha Productions crew, which is the Peyton Manning group, along with Eli Manning, the group that they kind of have, their film group anyway. And appreciate all the support. We'll be live for you guys, as I mentioned, tomorrow night. We'll try to do our baseball live around the 8:30 hour, and then quickly thereafter update you guys on the NBA as well. Thank you guys for joining us here at the Upside, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.